In this video, I want to have a look at dividing fractions. So first we need to know a bit of terminology. So if we flip a fraction upside down, we get what's called its reciprocal. So for example, if we had 3/4, its reciprocal would be 4/3. So we're just flipping the whole thing upside down. So if we're asked to divide by a fraction, what we actually do is we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal. So we're going to have a look at a few examples and hopefully that will make a little bit more sense. Okay, so our first question is 5 divided by a half. Now before we get into this reciprocal stuff, I want you to think about what division means. So when we say 5 divided by a half, what we're asking is how many times will a half fit into 5? So we know that there's 2 halves in one whole, so that means 5 wholes is going to have 10 halves in them. So 1 half will fit into 5 10 times. Now let's have a look at what it means with this reciprocal. So if we've got 5 divided by a half, what we're going to do is we're going to have 5 multiplied by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1 half would be 2/1. Now 2 divided by 1, that's just 2. So we're going to have 5 times 2, which will give us 10. All right, let's have a look at another one. 4 divided by 1/3. So let's have a think about it first, what it means. We're saying how many times will 1/3, or how many thirds, will fit into 4 wholes. So we know that there's 3 thirds in one whole, so that means that in 4 wholes there'd have to be 12 thirds. But again, let's go through the process. So we're going to have 4, and instead of dividing by a third, we're going to times by 3/1. Now again, 3/1, 3 divided by 1 is just 3. So 4 times 3, which would give us 12. For our third question, we've got 4 divided by 2/3. Now, 2/3, well, that's got to be twice as big as 1/3. So that means we should only be able to fit half as many 2/3 into 4 as we did 1/3. So if we fit 12 1/3, or 1/3 fit in 12 times, that means that 2/3 should only fit in 6 times because they're twice as big. But let's have a look at and see what happens when we work through this process. So we're going to have 4, and instead of dividing by 2/3, we're going to times by 3/2. Now, to write this a little bit neater so we can multiply it, I'm going to rub that 4 out, and I'm going to replace it with a 4/1. And now we can multiply numerators and denominators. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 1 times 2 is 2. And then we've got this 12 divided by 2, which is going to give us 6. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. So in this one, we've got 2/7 divided by 3/5. So our first fraction is just going to stay the same, but instead of dividing by 3/5, we're going to times by 5/3. So then we multiply the numerators, so 2 times 5 will give us 10, and 7 times 3 will give us 21. And for our last example, we've got 3/8 divided by 6. So I'm going to write that 6 as a 6/1 to write it as a fraction. So then we're going to have 3/8, and I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so 1/6. Now if I multiply through, 3 times 1 is 3, and 8 times 6 is 48. But if we look at that, we can actually simplify that because they can both be divided by 3. So if we divide those by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 48 divided by 3 would be 16. So our answer is just 1/16. Now again, you could simplify that first. So if we had the multiplication 3/8 times 1/6, we can simplify first. So the 3 and the 6 can both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then we can multiply, so 1 times 1 is 1, and 8 times 2 is 16. So either of those processes once you've turned it into a multiplication. So that's having a look at dividing fractions.